All right, let's see how many people join us.
Okay. अभी लिंक्डइन पे इवेंट विल स्टार्ट आ रहा है यूट्यूब पे आ गया है.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second webinar of Digital Decode Live. Let's wait for a few more people to join in and then we'll start. We'll have a lot of things to talk about. We have actually very important guests joining us from Strappy and Successive Digital, and a lot of things are going to be shared now. But we'll start in a minute or two so that we can have more audience to hear us.
म्यूजिक कहाँ से प्ले करते हैं. म्यूजिक प्ले कर रहे हैं.
All right, now, guys, welcome to the second webinar of Digital Decode Live once again. Today, we are going to discuss the potential technology and business benefits of implementing Headless CMS, how it differs from the traditional ones, and what all it takes to get it right. So, if there was ever a doubt that integrating digital technology was not a business need, the pandemic has crushed that notion. And so well, the technology has just changed the way we work, the way we travel, shop, and avail any kind of services. So, in a world where we almost breed technology, your organization's digital presence is one of the primary pathways to success. The question then becomes how to ensure that your investment in a new generation content management platform will support the digital transformation journey over the time. To answer this, we have some experts joining us right from Strappy and Successive Digital. Let me welcome our panelists for the webinar. We have Paul and Bart from Strappy. We have Gaurav Malik, Chief Strategy Officer at Successive Digital. And I'm Shifali Gill, your moderator for the discussion from Successive Digital. Welcome to this webinar, Gaurav, Paul, and Bart. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everybody. Great to be here.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah. All right. So for our viewers, we are live from both LinkedIn and YouTube, and so much content is going to be shared in next 1 hour. So stay tuned with us till the very end, and we are waiting for more people to join in. Yeah. And also, we will have a surprise. Gary, shall I tell people right now what is the surprise, or shall I keep them waiting a little bit more?
Well, we have a surprise, and it's really nice surprise. So keep watching, and you will get something really nice at the end of the webinar.
Yeah. So we have a surprise giveaway, and we'll announce this at the end of this webinar, as Gary just spoken about. right after the Q&A session. Now, if you have any questions as we go, just drop them in the comment section that we have on the sidebar, and we'll pick your questions, and each of them will be answered. So, yeah. Now, let's wait for a few more people to join in. Yeah, and one more thing, we're live on both LinkedIn and YouTube, so you can join us from anywhere. Either you can go to the LinkedIn, you can go to the YouTube and just tap on the screen, and you can join us. Yeah, so now coming back to the agenda of this discussion. So, one way to ensure the long term relevance of your digital transformation efforts is to choose the right headless CMS that offers the flexibility and extensibility to meet even the most demanding enterprise needs. I have picked up a very good analogy to make you understand what is headless CMS. So, imagine you have a pair of shoes that is designed specifically for just one activity, like just say running. Now, these shoes are great for running, but if you want to use them to go to a board meeting, you probably won't, as you are just stuck with one functionality, one style. Now, imagine you have a modular shoe system where you can mix and match different styles to create the perfect shoe for any occasion. Like if you want a running shoe, you can just attach it to a steep sole, or for a formal event, let's say, you can simply choose a dressier sole. Now, it sounds like a win win situation, right? Now, this is somehow what headless CMS is. Also, I was going through this statistics, and this is something that very few people know about, but 64% of enterprise organizations are already using the headless first approach. Now, that's a very, very huge number. Even when you go and buy groceries from Target or you buy a burger from Burger King, they even use headless CMS for the digital menu boards that we see over the big screens. So now my first question is to you, Bart. Being in this industry for so many years, you have seen it all. You have seen the shift from the traditional CMS to the modern CMS. So tell our audience, what is headless first approach and why do organizations consider migrating to a headless CMS? Over to you.
Yeah, great question. Obviously, I think it's something that when organizations hear about headless and what it is, their first question is why? What's the approach? What do we do? And I think a concept that I have brought up both in my time as Strappy and as a developer working with agencies that are choosing headless is the idea of thinking beyond the page builder. This is a concept that I talk to our clients about. It's a concept that I talk to our internal people about, our internal folks. And really what thinking beyond the page builder means to me and in the headless sense is think about the content first and your content modeling. You're not necessarily going to have all of that content available in like an FAQ page or a product page, right? You want each content model to be its own specific piece of content, because you're not just building out a page, you're not just building out a website. Oftentimes with the headless approach, you are building out a full digital experience. What that also means is that you're building out multiple channels. You're going to be using that data in multiple channels. So whether it is that website, whether it is the mobile application, whether it is even something as maybe something as different as a kiosk at the subway station, right? All of that can contain some of that data that you have in your headless CMS. So it is thinking about the content first. What things can be their own content types, how to relate those things to the pages where they need to be, and how to then pull that data in later on when you need it for not just your website, but like I said, your mobile app, your subway ad, your digital billboard, anything that you might be using that data for. So it's really important to think about the content first and your API in general, right? So you're thinking about the content, you're thinking about where you're adding those pieces of content, and that you're not just building out a a website, you're building out a full API. So that's why I always think about thinking beyond the page builder. Paul, was there anything else that from your experience you feel like is important when we talk about headless first and why organizations want to migrate?
Yeah, I really like what you mentioned, like the API first approach and this idea of multi-channel reach. And that's something that may be very difficult to do with traditional CMSs. And because of that, you get really good flexibility, not just for the developers, but the way you manage your content. For instance, it's front-end agnostic. You could use any framework of your choice. Basically, whatever your team is most comfortable with, it really easily fits into your tech stack. Another thing is you have an ability to make changes to your content without affecting your code base, right? Your front end or your phone app, or what you just do it inside the CMS like Strapi. And what's cool about it, because of the freedom of the headless CMS, you're able to optimize your content to deliver to different markets and regions. You have multilingual support, and you could reuse your content on multiple devices or websites, or you might have a smart fridge that needs content to show to the user. So the possibilities are limitless, which allows you to have a very tailored user experience. You're able to create very custom, unique experiences for your users because your content management is decoupled from your front end, and you're able to customize your front end as you need. And really, really cool. And another thing that I really like about this fact is because your content and your front end is decoupled, you do get a reduced attack surface. For instance, if instead of having your backend exposed, you just have your front end website. And it also improves scalability, again, because you're not thinking of deploying your monolithic traditional CMS, which has your front end and back end tied in together. You actually could deploy both your front end and your back end separately, allowing you to have more control around the scalability. And so I think that's really awesome to me.
Yeah, thanks, Bart and Paul. The way you both spoke and the points that you brought up are some of the first-hand information coming straight from the industry. But here, I would like to hear from Gary too.
So yeah, I think I'm going to answer this question a little later on. We can move on to the next question.
Yeah, sure. So, my takeaway from what we have just heard now is that the key reason why organizations prefer migrating to a headless CMS is because it's based on a cloud-based architecture where the decoupled backend and front end communicate via APIs, which simply means greater flexibility, number one, enhanced scalability, personalized experience, along with omni-channel content delivery. On top of that, we have easy third-party integration and content workflow efficiency, and no more data silos at the behest. By migrating to a headless CMS, organizations can abandon their limited approach and take the full control over their content operations. Now, I was reading this report which says that 83% of CMS migration projects face multiple challenges. They either fail or overrun their pre decided budget and implementation plans. So, corresponding to these stats, we are now going to understand the common challenges associated with migration to a headless CMS and how one can overcome these challenges. Here, Paul, I would like you to take this question up since you have been guiding businesses to implement Strapi and helping a lot of companies successfully migrate to a headless CMS and mitigate these challenges.
Sounds good. So the biggest challenge is that every organization, every company has different requirements. So the first thing before you even start solving the challenges that you may have with the migration is to identify your business needs and requirements so you at least know the direction that you're heading. So if you don't have a plan to begin with, make sure you start working on that first. With that being said, let's talk about some of the challenges that may arise. So implementing a headless CMS may require a more technical expertise compared to a traditional CMS, where sometimes because the front end and the back end is coupled together, it's very easy to start with at first, where with a headless CMS, you have the headless CMS and Strapi, you could get started very easily, but you still have that front end portion that you have to build out custom, and you have to create that communication via the API to be able to talk to your front end. So making sure that you invest in the training for your development team to understand, the workflow between headless CMS like Strapi, API first approach, and that you need a front end that communicates with that back end and build that all together. A lot of times, if you're starting something new, one of the challenges is you might not have an experienced team that could handle that. So this is why reaching out to a partner experience with a headless CMS, like Success of Digital, is very important, because you could get that jump start from their experience and you don't have to fight the process. And the one way that you mitigate the challenges that come in integrating the technical levels, what's cool about the headless first approach is you could start implementing those changes gradually. You don't have to do it all at once. And that's a common practice that we see from people that went through that process. The second challenge is, content migration and content modeling. You might have existing content and you need to move it to the new system, and it might be more complex, more time consuming, especially if you don't do your planning ahead of time. So one of the ways, or a couple of ways to mitigate this, is make sure that you go through thorough content audit on your end before you decide to make any changes or move anything. Make sure you understand your data, understand how you're going to structure that data in Strapi, how are you going to content model, where is everything going to live. Make sure you identify that first. And before making the migration, make sure you clean and prepare your data, because the way your data is structured now may not be the best way that you want to represent it moving forward. So when you're focusing on migrating your data, and that is the most challenging part from what I hear, definitely take your time, prepare your data for migration. And what's awesome, again, I mentioned you could do all of this incrementally to minimize disruption to the process. And from Strapi's standpoint, once you identify the process of migration, again, you might store data in WordPress. You might store it somewhere else. You might have an actual SQL database that you're like, oh, we'll just write a custom migration script. But sometimes it's not as straightforward. So at Strapi, because you have the access to the Strapi API, you could literally create your data set. You could store it as JSON, CSV file, whatever makes sense in your case, and you could create a custom script that targets Strapi API directly, loops your data, and will add that data using the native support for Strapi, which tends to be the easiest way. And if you have questions on that, you could always let me know in the chat. Another thing to consider when migrating is SEO preservation. You might have had a website that's been getting certain SEO ranking and traffic, and you want to make sure that you keep that in consideration, thinking about how to preserve the existing URL structure, using website crawlers before and after migration to ensure that all your SEO changes were transferred and work correctly, implementing proper redirects where it makes sense, and make sure that after post-migration, you monitor your search ranking to make sure that you could adjust any of the things that you need to adjust to make sure that migration was successful. Another issue, and it really depends if the user is coming more from like a traditional CMS world, is user adoption and learning curve. Sometimes for non-technical users that are very comfortable using WordPress or websites like Squarespace, where it's like a page builder, your content and your presentation layers coupled together, they kind of have the same expectation without understanding what headless CMS is. So from your standpoint, when migrating to a headless CMS, make sure that you provide the training for the content editors and marketers, that they understand this paradigm shift, like Bart mentioned, think beyond the page builder, and make sure that you choose a headless CMS with a user-friendly interface. And again, very important, whenever you implement these features, you could remember that you don't have to do it all at once. You could do incremental rollout and adoption to make sure that you're doing things in steps. And another challenge is, how do you integrate? Maybe you are using existing services, third-party systems. How do you integrate those things with your headless CMS? Does your headless CMS support? So make sure when you're deciding and you're picking which headless CMS is right for you. And obviously, I'm from Strapi. I will tell you, Strapi got you covered because it is highly customizable. Number one, you are able to create custom plugins, custom endpoints. You're able to integrate any third API service easily because it's just based on Node.js. So if you could do it in Node, you could do it in Strapi, which is pretty awesome. And whatever changes you make sure that you test them to make sure they work. And the final point that a lot of us sometimes don't think about depending on the region where you live, like your content might have certain compliance and governance. And so you have to think, does the CMS that we're choosing allows to implement like a strong content approval workflow? For instance, in Strapi, we have review workflow where you could create these workflows that allow the content editors, the managers really understand where the content is, what step they're on before publishing, that way avoiding any mistakes. And as an organization, to make sure that those rules are followed, make sure you establish like a clear policies and procedures. And those are some of the things. If there's a question that you have, save it in the chat and we'll answer during Q&A.
Yeah, I can see a lot of questions in the sidebar. We have a few questions for Shetang, Shubham. Then Sumit is also asking one of the things, and Abhijit, and we have a few people from Strapi as well who are asking. So all of your questions will be answered, guys. Just wait for us to come on to that session. We'll have a dedicated Q&A session. Here, Gaurav, I would like to hear from you a little bit, like what do you have to add in here?
Sure, wonderful. Thanks, Shefali, for the question. I think Paul has done a fantastic job in covering all the issues, right? And what we recommend is if you've been on a traditional CMS, it's been more on the theme based, right? If you're thinking to go headless, number one is to ensure that you have a technology team in-house, as well as a partner who has done this many, many times. That's the first challenge that anyone should look at. Are you ready for the migration? Do you have those capabilities? Do you have the right infrastructure in place, right? Once you have figured that out, you also need to plan that there will be some upfront cost of migration, but that's going to pay off in long term. I think integration challenges might also come in because you may not have all the APIs ready where you would like to pull in the data. But one thing I want to really stress is we did one implementation and we are doing many, many implementations with Strapi. One of the benefit of using Strapi, what Paul was mentioning, is you can easily rely on Strapi and host it into your cloud, and you don't have to go through the compliances issues and data privacy issues within your country. A lot of clients, we have done CMS comparison, and Strapi is the way to go. It gets all the checkboxes done where it pretty much meets everything that the clients are looking for. So we are like number one partner with Strapi, and we look forward to many, many implementations. The last challenge I want to highlight is how do you then go about and maintain that, right? It's not that you've just done the headless implementation and everything is hunky-dory. You need to plan for your maintenance plan as well and have the developers continue to do that, right? What you will benefit is the flexibility, the agility that your marketing team gets, and they'll be like, wow, we have some really cool tools under our belt, and they are able to do a lot more than what they were able to do with traditional CMS.
I did have one point. I think Bart had a really good point about man, I talked to you about it, Bart. I forgot what about go ahead.
It was primarily from my perspective, it was primarily about the hosting requirements and needs of your organization. Having previously worked, I've worked with organizations that were, for example, very much WordPress shops, and you get accustomed to the workflow there. And while it's not going to necessarily be more difficult, it does make sense to make sure that you understand the hosting requirements for your headless CMS. Also important to understand, you will have a front end that you will have to host as well. And to a lot of the points that we talked about earlier that both Paul and Gary mentioned, migrating just the data from a more legacy CMS, even if you've got many instances of, let's say, WordPress again, it's such a ubiquitous CMS that I think everyone has at least an idea of how that might look. If you've got certain plugins on your WordPress instance, if you've got certain items that one has that another doesn't, the content structure is going to look much different. So even the migration from, let's say site A to Strapi, for example, and site B to Strapi, those migrations might look a little bit different if you have different content structures, if you have different plugins that you've installed, and that data within is structured differently. So it really is important. But one of the challenges that, again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, that I've seen clients face is that hosting requirement. It's a newer requirement. They're very much used to what they've been doing. So it is something to understand upfront, to get ahead of, and either host yourself, as Gary alluded to, right? Strapi is very well suited to be self-hosted. That's where we started. That's what we have. Or find something that makes sense from the CMS specifically, such as Strapi Cloud, where you do have cloud hosting. Again, going back to the governance and compliance, it is making sure that everything is compliant for the region that you're in, for the use case that you're going to be doing. But ultimately, that's a big consideration that I think folks need to really look at as they're starting their headless journey.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul, Gary, and Bart. These insights are really helpful for our audience. And Paul, I saw your kitten was roaming around. Would you like to bring her to the webinar as well?
No, she's just causing trouble. She lunched from my table to the kitchen table, ran around the room 10 times. I'm like, I think she'll be safer being down here for now.
Yeah. Would you like
She
to
loves,
bring her so that she can say hi to our audience?
I know. She's out.
she likes Headless CMS.
I know. Every time we talk about Strapi, she wants to know what's up. She's excited for the Strapi 5 upcoming launch soon. Keep everybody posted.
And she knows successive as well now.
Yes.
Yeah. She know both Gary and I now, so it's wonderful. So for our audience, navigating the complexities of migrating to a headless content management solution demands a keen understanding of all the challenges that we have just discussed. And integrating with existing system, we have a lot of challenges like content fragmentation, we have budget overruns, data security, integration with the existing systems, and more. And also I can see that a lot of new people have joined in. Welcome to this webinar once again, everyone. If you have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the comment section. Continue with us till the very end. We'll have a surprise giveaway announcement for our audience. And our team is also dropping some blogs related to this webinar. Just pick them from the sidebar in case you miss anything here. So coming back to the agenda, who needs a headless first approach? So organizations that are looking to deploy content across diverse digital channels to meet their business need. Even study shows that we are going to see over the screens right now is that companies that leverage headless CMS have experienced a 25% improvement in the website loading times, contributing to a better user engagement and satisfaction. Now, this can happen only when you choose the right headless CMS. Now, there are countless features and factors to consider with any software selection, and the same goes to choosing the right headless CMS. We even look for so many features while buying a couch or a shampoo for ourselves. So why not choosing a headless CMS should be our biggest consideration, by considering all the factors and by considering all the features, because your entire customer experience is dependent upon the right headless CMS. So Paul, would you like to tell our audience 5 factors that they should consider when choosing the right headless CMS?
Yeah, definitely. So when choosing the right CMS, obviously, like I stated before, every business, every organization, every project has their own needs and requirements. Once you understand what your needs are, you want to evaluate the different CMSs that you're looking at if they meet those needs. And one of the things that you want to think about is does it allow you to deliver content multi-channel? For instance, you might have a website, a mobile app, you might even have an IoT device, and does it use API first approach like Strapi does? You have an amazing admin area where you're able to manage your data, and any one of your channels, be it your website, a mobile app, your IoT, could consume the data via the API request. Also consider the future growth of the CMS, headless CMS, to handle the increase in content and traffic. Does it grow with you? Does it help you to scale forward into the future, right? Wherever your project is now, it might continue to grow as you continue to grow as a company. So you want to make sure that you pick a headless CMS that fits that need and is able to scale with you like Strapi can. And, and very, some of the things we mentioned before, how does it integrate with existing tools and systems? You might already have certain solutions or third-party APIs that you're using. Can those integrate with your current headless CMS. And those are the things to consider. And this is one of the things I love about Strapi. You are able to easily add custom functionality either through custom controllers or services, or create plugins that will consume and integrate those services in whatever way or needs that fit your use case. And to me, the most important part is it easy to use? Is it easy to get started? Do you have the support? If you have any questions, for instance, how's their getting started? Do you have a good community support? Do they have great documentation? And it's not only having great documentation or great support, is that are they constantly updating their resources and content to make sure that things are up to date? Those are really key important things to consider, because you as a business owner or a developer working, you don't want to spend a lot of time trying to figure out answers to your questions. And so you want to find a company that is doing their best to do that. And no company is perfect because things change so rapidly, but that is a thing to consider. What resources do you have? For instance, do they have a forum? Do they hold open office hours? We do hold open office hours Monday through Friday, 12:30 p.m. CST on Discord. So if you have any questions about Strapi, you could always ask. And also, do they have affiliate partners like Success of Digital that could give you support from start to finish to get your project done correctly? That way, you don't have to worry about needs. A lot of times, sometimes people want to do it themselves, but what a lot of people don't consider is the learning cost could be very great. So if you have someone with an experienced team that could help you take your goal and bring it over the finish line, sometimes paying that is actually better than trying to acquire that learning cost that could hurt in the long run, especially if you start running into issues. And another thing is to consider about a headless CMS is the content management and content modeling side of things. Is it easy for non-technical content creators and editors to work with the system to manage the content? Looking for tools that exist in the CMS that allow the approval or the content management process easier. Like I mentioned in Strapi, we have review workflows, we have draft and publish, we have content history that help to improve that user non-technical experience. Very, very important. And another, like we always like to talk about Strapi, it's omni-channel. You have many different use cases. And one of the biggest things, does the content modeling allow you to build content specific for different needs, which is able to reach a diverse user base. So you could have one content management system like Strapi that allows you to serve all your business use cases through your content. And from developer advocate standpoint, I talked to a lot of developers. The biggest thing that people want to see in their CMS is the ability to customize the project. Because Strapi is open source, because we have a very customizable ecosystem, you can create custom code, like I mentioned before. You could create custom controls, custom endpoints. You could create custom plugins, basically whatever needs that you need, you could fit. And so what that allows you as a company to be flexible and add any third-party integration or need to your project just by building it yourself if it doesn't yet exist. And that's part of, I have it here in my notes, talk about the third-party services and integration. Because you're so customizable, you're able to do that. Another thing that I really love about Strapi is that it's Node.js and TypeScript. And most front-end people obviously lean into JavaScript, like React, Next.js. It's so many frameworks out there. And so you could have, one language kind of ecosystem for your backend and your front end that makes it very easy, not just for developers to be able to work on both the front end and back end without having to context switch. You're able to easily hire developers because it's just one language. And the last point that I have here is how active is the team or the company behind the CMS on its development, on its updates, on its improvement. How frequently are they updating, releasing patches, handling bugs, working on new features, listening to the community? So those are all the things to consider. And Bart, is there anything that, from the standpoint, because you deal a lot with front customer facing, is there anything that from their perspective that I might have missed?
Yeah, so I think one of the last points you made specifically about the tech stack is huge. You have a lot of these perhaps either older legacy CMSs that are written in a tech stack that, or in a language rather, that perhaps isn't as utilized as it once was, or you've got very boxed in, non-headless, monolithic CMSs that you don't have the ability to touch the code on. And frankly, the tech stack is going to be hugely important, especially if you're working with a team. Your team's knowledge, your team's time. We always talk about time being money. It's important that you're saving the money by allowing your team to do what they do best. Fitting in with that tech stack is going to be hugely important to allow them to continue to expand their knowledge on that specific piece of technology, not just something like Strapi, for example, but something like JavaScript or TypeScript, and be able to use that to better create the solutions that your business needs for your business case. Now, from my perspective, talking to the clients that are looking to jump into a headless CMS, one of the things that they talk about, that especially on the developer side, especially on the front end developer side, of which that I was a part of both on the Strapi side and the development side, is the freedom to customize your front end. A lot of times if you have a coupled CMS, that freedom is there, but it's not as prevalent, right? You do have to deal with some of the particular design choices of a specific CMS, whereas here you can focus on that API and make sure you've got your front end that consumes that API in a way that makes sense for you, for your designers especially, and for the business as a whole. You want to make sure that everyone is a part of this process. It's not just a page builder. It's not just a technical asset. It is a full digital experience, and anyone that would be part of that digital experience can be part of that headless experience, right? From developers, designers, content editors, marketers, and more. They're all a part of it, and they're all able to make sure that it works for the business. So it is something that you need to take a look at. And lastly, I think Paul touched on it, the support and frequency of updates and active development, right? Being on the Strapi side, we see all of these things quite frequently, right? Paul plugged the office hours that we have on Discord every weekday. Those are fantastic resources for us, but just the fact that we have such an active Discord channel in general allows our community to ask those questions that they have. And chances are someone has run into either that sort of problem, that sort of item has had that question, and the community can help answer those questions. And it is a very active community, I will say. And the frequency of updates too. I mean, the community being there to help people through those kind of things is hugely important. And from the Strapi side, it's great because we see the kind of ideas that people are having. It allows us to evaluate our product based on what they're saying. But from the development side, I mean, being able to ask those questions or see that those questions have been asked that I also have while developing are hugely helpful, because as we said, time is money. And if you're able to save that time for yourself and for your development process, you're able to save money, and you're able to really make sure that you're doing things in a way that is supported and is really doable with the solution that you have. Gary, was there anything that you'd like to add to this one from your side?
I think you guys covered it all. Thank you so much. I think this is very valuable information for our audiences. I'm just going to build on what Bart, you and Paul, you guys mentioned. One of the things that is very important for a business is it a business decision or is it a technology decision, right? And we cannot have a siloed decision taken by the technology teams that let's go ahead and use Strapi or any other CMS, which is headless, or it cannot just be a marketing decision that let's go with this CMS, right? So that to me is step number one, right? Ensuring that, I think Paul or Bart, you mentioned that having the right stakeholders buy in, that what are we getting into, right? So it's very important to get the right demos done, get the marketing team and the business teams aligned that this is how your world would be when you move to a headless CMS, right? And then going into the technology team and saying, hey, this is what your world would look like in terms of maintenance and development perspective. Once you do that, kind of draw a map that what are the current gaps or the pros and cons of moving to a headless CMS, right? I've seen many organizations, they come to us and say, hey, we are struggling, we want to move to a headless CMS, can you help out, right? So we do those platform selections, quick 2 weeks of audit, talking to their business, talking to their technology, and coming up with the pros and cons. One of the one of the trends that we are seeing in the global market, right? If we work with clients in Europe, in APAC, and the US, is multilingual support by the headless CMS, right? Uh, our clients are even going to a level that they want to see multilingual support even in the authoring interface, the labels of the authoring interface and the administration. And Strappy provides that. And we are very happy to, position Strappy into our conversations, because then it becomes very easy for us, and it is kind of less customizations for the clients as well. And then the value add is quite high.
Yeah. Thank you so much, our experts. And time is money. You spoke a wonderful thing here, Bart, and that's something that I'm going to keep in my notes, because that's a wonderful point. So, my takeaway from what our experts just spoke about is that choosing a headless CMS takes a careful consideration of content delivery and management, security, content role workflow, customization and flexibility, content localization, and on top of all, choosing the right digital transformation partner like Successive Digital. And modern CMS are designed for the content first approach. They are based on the concept of digital experience, which provides more flexibility but also gives business multi channel growth opportunities. Now, since we are already talking about growth, the headless CMS was worth $600 million in 2022. Now, these numbers are predicted to reach over $3 billion by 2032. So, Gary, as per your experience working with organizations for over 2 decades, you have seen it all. The shift from traditional to the modern CMS that we are talking about, the headless one, what do you think are the potential opportunities and benefits for businesses that migrate to a headless CMS?
Yeah, thank you, Shafali. Good question. So I'm going to take this in probably 3 decades of how the businesses have evolved, right? I mean, if you look at 2011 to 2020, that has been like, we need a CMS because we need to have abilities to have the content management systems. The first answer was, let's get stand up a WordPress website, right? Now, organizations didn't think that, oh my gosh, now I have 15 different channels. I have to integrate with the IoTs, it's not just the mobile and the desktop anymore, right? Now, with the advent of AI, you have to integrate with the voice enabled devices as well, right? So, ensuring that you see a larger picture and clearly create an omni-channel content delivery system which is scalable without duplicating the efforts is the key for any business to be successful when they want to move to a headless CMS, right? That's a huge benefit. With obviously there would be upfront cost, get the right partner, hire the right developers, but then you will get agility, you would get time to market, you will be faster than your competition, right? The other benefit of moving to headless CMS is the whole advanced developer experience, right? So, for example, if you are not in a headless CMS, you're constrained with two things. One is you're dependent on the product. If the functionality is in the product, you can do it. If it's not, oh, by the way, buy another license for the product. And then we'll be able to help you with the targeting and running targeted campaigns, etc. But if your CMS is headless, it opens up a world of opportunities where you could build some custom front-end frameworks, build your own tools, and again, as I said, faster time to market. The other considerations that benefits is the whole performance of your website, right? As you grow as a business, as your MAU increases, you would have more and more people coming to your website. What you don't want is the performance to go down. So that's another benefit of ensuring that how your headless CMS is implemented, how your user experience is implemented, how are you looking at your SEO, and and plan that entire benefits of having the headless CMS. Lastly, I touched base on the target part, but the whole personalized experiences is the key, right? It is no longer a value add that, wow, I can have personalized experiences, because when we deliver customer experiences to our clients, the 360-degree view of the customer is very important. If a brand is sending me a campaign, I don't mind. But if I don't have any hair, if they are selling me shampoo, then it's not going to help, right? Because I'm not a big shampoo user, right? So those are some of the things that is required in terms of complete personalization, and headless is the way to go to have those personalizations. That's kind of the broader sense of benefits that organizations will get moving to headless CMS.
Yeah, 100%. And what I believe is that the omni-channel capability is one of the USPs of the headless CMS. Now, instead of publishing content to a single website or a channel, the headless CMS can deliver content to multiple touchpoints: phones, smartwatches, tablets, IoT devices, digital signage screens. You name it, and the headless CMS gets it delivered, even faster than the 10 minutes grocery delivery app as they promise. Now we are before we move on to the next section, that is the Q&A. Bart and Paul, do you have anything to add in here?
I think you all did a great job covering a lot of the important things. I would be excited for the Q&A session to see some of the questions that come from the viewers.
Yep.
Yeah, all
Likewise.
right.
Yeah.
So we are now moving on to the next section, which is the audience voice, and seeing the level of content that have been shared here. I'm pretty sure that our audience have a lot to ask, and a lot of their questions have already been answered. So we have a pool of questions, but seeing the time constraint, I'll pick only 4 or maybe 5. So we have this question by Astha. She's asking, how does a headless CMS handle product data and inventory management? Bart and Paul, would you like to take this up?
I could start first. Because you have the flexibility to create a collection type that could be your product, you can manage it that way in Strapi. One caveat that I would say, depending how you're structuring your infrastructure, what a lot of folks do is sometimes they have Shopify store where that's where a lot of their content and inventory is managed. And what Strapi does, it just sits as a middle ground, like middle man or person between the two, and only storing the interaction, like how many sales are made or what have you. So that's one approach. But you can directly use Strapi, headless CMS as a product management, and you would do it as any other collection. You could create a collection type. You could have all your product and inventory, and what you could do, you could actually create custom scripts, for instance, like that give you reporting. Like, for instance, after a certain amount of sales is done, you can have a custom endpoint that will say, this is how many things we sold, this is how many things we have left. Because Strapi is highly customizable, you have the flexibility to do that.
Yeah, all right. So we have another question by Shreya. She's asking, how does a headless CMS support multi-channel retailing and omni-channel strategies? Gary, I think this question goes to you, since we just spoke about omni-channel strategies.
Yeah, so I think when businesses look at omni-channel strategies, right, what is very important is how do you prioritize your omni-channel strategy? Which channel do you want to focus first? If you're going to focus on all the channels, then obviously it's you can, but it's expensive and it's hard to implement, right? So for example, we were working for one of the clients in California, and they wanted to build an app, right? But then we did some analysis, and the audit, we found out that the majority of the traffic is coming on the web and not on the app, on the mobile devices, right? So do you really want to build an app, because if that's kind of just 20% of the traffic that you're getting? So there are various stages and maturity levels that we assess for our clients in terms of implementing the omnichannel strategy. But what we suggest to the audiences and even to our clients is keep the omnichannel strategy as your first step in whatever you do. Look at your channels and look at the CMSs which can support the primary channels and the priorities that you set up. If it's setting it up, developer community is good, you have those technologies, scale it up, go ahead and do it. But then I think Paul also mentioned, keep in mind, don't go full blown, go step by step. Pick a portion of your website that you want to go and do it, test it out, do it step by step, and then go full blown.
Yeah, that has been well answered by you, Gary. Paul and Bart, anything from your side?
The one interesting thing I want to add as Strappy, working at Strappy and in my previous projects that I built before starting at Strappy, I always thought about Strappy being the main feature of my project. But what I realized, there's a lot of organizations and companies that use it as a part of their integration. So you could actually have Strappy have a very particular need. Maybe it's manage your users and their user data, or maybe it's just managing your blog posts and content. And so what I found out is that depending on your project needs, you can uh, use Strappy in whatever use case is necessary, and it doesn't even have to be the only solution. For instance, I was working on a project, and I did this like by total accident, but I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting idea. I was building a learning management system, and my one Strappy instance is managing all the courses. And I was like, oh, it'll be cool if this instance is just responsible for courses only. But I was like, but I want to have blogs on my website also. And then I was like, oh, I'll just put it from my other instance that I already had up, where I've been blogging on for like a couple of, like almost like a year. I'll just use that content. So I have one front end that's actually pulling two different sources from two different Strappy instances. And to me, what that kind of highlighted is that you have the flexibility to use it in whatever capacity is needed for your company. And you don't have to just think, oh, I just need one instance. You can, but I just love that flexibility. And it could be, hey, our product is built 100% on Strappy, or it could be like, hey, our product is built on Strappy, but we have all these third-party integrations that are either pulled and managed by Strappy, or they're consumed directly from your front end, like if you're using Next.js. So I just want to add that because I myself like was like really very impressed. Like, oh, this is actually kind of cool, the flexibility you get.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even the example we were talking about earlier, where you're using Strappy perhaps as a product management or product information management system, right? So you're just adding, let's say you're selling, I don't know, shoes. I think we talked about shoes earlier in the call, right? So you're selling shoes. Each shoe might have a different kind of material on the upper. Each shoe might have different sole material. Each shoes might have different color laces. All of that information, you could use Strappy as really having that information, and then the other side where you're doing the e-commerce side could be handled by something like Shopify that you're already using for those. So there's a lot that you can do with it. It really is, especially working with Strappy, it really does come as a sandbox for you to create the type of content that you need and the type of information that you need sent to various places without having those constraints of already having to use pre-built items. Certainly we have pre-built items like text fields and data fields and those sorts of things, but your content types you're creating for your project so they fit your project, not the developer who created its project.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because I'm always blown away different use cases that we find with Strappy. And I don't know if this is a good one, but this is a use case somebody had that blew my mind. Basically, they had a bunch of IoT devices, which were temperature sensors that would check temperature in like hourly increments, and all that data would be stored in Strappy. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Your Strappy instance communicate with those IoT devices. I would have never even thought of that. And to me, that's the flexibility that really shines with using something like Strappy.
Yeah, wonderful. So there's one very interesting question that I can see asked by Purav Gandhi. He's asking any product roadmap to implement and integrate AI in Strappy.
I know AI is this popular thing. I personally think, it's awesome, but you have to tread lightly because what is hype, what is not hype. I think if you're going to use AI, you want to use it in a very effective way that helps and solves a business need rather being like, oh, we just have AI in the title. It seems to, help, oh, we do this with AI, but does it actually improve the user experience? So I think we as a company, we're going to be cautious about how we integrate those things. Right now in the roadmap, we're really focusing on Strappy 5 release. This is our main goal, but we have internally explored different AI integrations as part of Strappy when we did an internal hackathon. So we are thinking about it, but we are still focused on Strappy 5 release. And once that's done, and you could And once that's out, we're going to start planning for the next step and figure out like where we at. But one thing that I will say is because of our plugin ecosystem, like I myself created a plugin which basically allows me to take my content in Strapi, create text embeddings where I could have a chatbot which can answer questions about my content. So integrating AI, you don't have to wait on Strapi to have native AI integrations. You can literally build them yourselves through the plugin ecosystem that we have. And that's something I've been doing. We have a company, AirUps, which is pretty awesome for AI integration. They're actually building a plugin that integrates with Strapi with their AI features. And once that's out, definitely we'll let you know all about it. But one thing I was going to say, as a company, we are focused on Strapi 5, but as our ecosystem of our partners, plugin developers, and different companies, they're building their own integrations for Strapi via plugins.
Right. So I think one thing to add here is, right, while, as Paul rightly mentioned, right, one has to be very careful on not just for the sake of it, integrate AI, but there are a lot of peripherals and use cases that are coming up that we are already implementing when we are implementing CMS and commerce and many other solutions. One key giveaway I can provide is we have developed certain Gen AI frameworks where we are creating SEO optimized articles for e-commerce website, right? So the whole SEO part is now getting kind of disrupted by creating a lot of those optimized articles, which is actually matching with what a human would create. So whoever is asking this question, I would recommend that look at what are the peripheral work that is required when you're implementing CMS, and see what are the repeatable tasks that can be optimized. And Gen AI is the way to go. That can help you guys a lot, especially when it comes to the content part and marketing division.
Yeah. And I think, Purav, your question have been answered. We'll pick another question from Purav Gandhi. He is asking, can we do staging server like we have in Magnolia CMS? How to work with data and check-ins and ensure that the data is transferred well? They have different environment variables, etc.
So it really depends on like how you structure the process. But yes, you can have your dev environment that is local. You could have a staging environment that you push your changes to staging, you test them there, and then you have your production. The reason why this question is hard to answer is because it really depends on what infrastructure you're using. Are you using AWS? Are you using Google? Are you using Strapi Cloud? And depending on those different ways or strategies that you use will dictate a certain different like workflow. So it is like project specific. But one thing that I would say in terms of using Strapi out of the box, you do have Strapi import and export function that allows you to export your data and then re-import into a different project. We also have a data transfer functionality that allows you to take your local data from, let's say, your dev environment or another project that's hosted somewhere, either cloud or on some sort of web server, where you could transfer your data from one hosted environment to another using transfer. And the feature is fairly new since we started building it. And so we are in constant development, but you're able to do that now. For instance, in my personal workflow, I have my local development in my computer, and I have the data that I have there. Whenever I need to push the changes, I could use the transfer command. The one caveat I would say here, and most of you who are, I'm not a backend engineer, but most of you who are, you already know this, like you never use the same database in your staging, your production, or your local. And so make sure that you have those like very definitively like defined, like, hey, do not mess with the production database ever. Don't push changes to the database from your local to the obvious things. I just want to mention, because sometimes you still hear people where they're like, oh, I made this change locally and it broke my production. I'm like, did you point to the same database? They're like, yes. I'm like, oh God, why? But
Okay.
anyway, that's the I will add that. I see one question that I wanted to add because I think it's important. I think Vishal, sorry if I mispronounced your name incorrectly, talked about security. One question, he had a couple of questions. One, how we disclose security issues. What is the process? Also, in terms of like, can you add extra layers of security to Strapi application? I'll just answer that quickly. Whenever there's a security issue and we get the disclosure from security researcher, what we do, we right away, raise the level of severity. We work on fixing it. As soon as we patch it, we make sure that we update everything. And after we implement the changes, our security team writes the disclosure and we publish it on a blog post. And then we'll say, hey, this was the security issue that we had. This was patched in this version. If you're below this version, make sure that you update. And then the second part of that question, in terms of he was asking about rate limiting, asking about adding additional validation. And I saw that someone already answered in the comment, and I also answered too, but I just want to answer it publicly so people know. Because Strapi is very customizable, you have access to the global middleware, route middleware, you have policies, and you're able to add any additional security layers or implementation that's you need.
Yeah. So we'll now pick the last question for the Q&A session. And this is a question that I think, Paul, you can invite your kitten to answer because that's related to Strapi 5. So the question we have from audience is, what's the plan for Strapi 5, specifically with the migration from 4 to 5 in mind?
Yes, that's a great question. And if you've been a long-time Strapi follower, you know that the migration from V3 to V4 was not as straightforward as we wanted to be. We own up to it. It was just a tough process. And one of the reasons why it was a tough process is because V3 to V4, we literally rewrote majority of the code of the Strapi code base. So there's a lot of changes. The one thing that I was going to say, because we learned that lesson, we are going and went out of our way to make the migration process very simple. We do have a part of our CLI, we have a migration script, which will basically allow you to migrate your V4 project to V5 in a very straightforward way. The one caveat be, anytime you have custom controllers, custom code that you wrote or third-party integrations, those things you still probably will have to migrate manually. But one of the, I am going to make a stream. I'll let everybody know when it's out, but we have a Strapi corporate starter, which is currently living on V4. I am actually already went through the process of migrating it to test out the migration script. And I was very pleasantly amazed how well that process went. So I'll create the resources covering that process and I'll share them as a blog post in the video. But the process is, I'm pretty happy where we are today.
All right. So now we are moving on to the much awaited section of this discussion today. And before we move, I would like to thank our audience. We have tackled all the questions very well. And shall we disclose this this early, or shall we wait for a little bit more time? Yeah, one more thing for our audience, we have our LinkedIn profile, like the LinkedIn page of Successive Digital in the comment section. Go to the page and follow us so that you can get some more insights into the digital transformation world, on what's happening. You'll be updated on our next webinars as we go. So, as we promised, the giveaway is the ebook for Headless CMS Migration. You can
Yay.
find, yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Our team have
Wonderful
handpicked
book.
it.
I think let me give kudos to our marketing team, and marketing team. You can come behind Shefali. We all can see you. You can see our marketing team sitting right next to Shefali. They've been working day in and day out, and this book has been curated in participation with Strapi as well. And we hope that you'll get lots of insights. So send the link as soon as possible, Shefali, and let everyone receive it.
Yeah, sure. So we are dropping the link in the comment section, and viewers, make it yours. It's for you now, guys. Just download it and save it to yourselves, and it's wonderful. It's a very wonderful ebook. I personally like it very much. So now, as we move towards the end of this webinar, I want to thank our speakers for taking out their time. For our viewers, here is the email ID on the screen. If you want to speak to our experts or if you have any questions, we'll set up a dedicated session. Just drop us an email. Once again, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. And would you like to end this on a wonderful note, or anything that you want to say?
Yeah, I would like to just say thank you so much, Bart, and thank you so much, Paul, and thank you, everyone, our wonderful audiences, for joining us. I want to thank all the leadership team of Strappy. I know they are on the call, they've been answering a lot of questions. A big gratitude, and look forward to many more webinars and enable our clients, our prospects, our developer community, and keep this going.
I just want to say, there's a saying, how you do some things is how you do all things. And whenever we work with Successive Digital, from the process that they go through to preparing these streams, they're so professional, so curious. It makes Bart's and our jobs actually easy to be here. So you are one of our most favorite streams to do. So thank you so much for your support and your professionalism. You always do what you say you're going to do, and always amazing to work with you.
Thank you.
Absolutely mirroring Paul's comments here. It's always from the sales side too, especially if someone's new to Headless. It's always, we go to our partners, and to know that you all are great to work with and have done a fantastic job putting things together is always great. So, the more information that we can share, the better.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful day, and time to end the webinar. And thank you, Shefali, for being such a wonderful host.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would like to show, I would want you all to meet the person who's behind the scenes with us, who have been sharing all the links and who have been very proactive with the questions and answers we have. Tejasvi here, guys. Meet her.
Hello, everyone.
She's from the marketing team. She has been working with us very closely to get this done and to make it a success.
Good to see you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, guys. So we are wrapping up this session. Thank you so much again. We'll meet another time in the future as well.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.